Hey folks, this is Kalani. We got some good news, some bad news, and some weird news for the WoW Remix Pandaria event, including information about bronze upgrade costs and whether or not we will see a discount on upgrading your gear. There are a lot of buffs and nerfs to various aspects of the game mode, which have led to some new odd ways to min-max the event as well. There are also some balance tuning changes for Dragonflight and live servers, and the War Within test cycle is taking its next big step, bringing us closer to that eventual release date. So there's a lot to talk about. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's kick things off with the WoW Remix Pandaria changes this week because we have some bad news and quite a few weird updates. First up, we now have confirmation that the bronze costs for upgrading gear will not be changing anytime soon. So if you were hoping for the bronze costs to be reduced to help you gear up and upgrade gear faster, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. There's a blue post going over their decision, and it basically boils down to lots of folks have already upgraded their gear to clear through the higher difficulties of raids, and we don't want them to feel like they've wasted their time and effort upgrading their gear. Higher difficulties of raids offer a lot of bronze, so you should just upgrade your gear to chase after those extra bronze rewards. I know a lot of folks were waiting and hoping for a discount before upgrading their gear, and while this isn't the answer that you may have wanted, having an answer is still better than waiting and wondering. So no bronze cost reductions, which means you have a bit of a choice to make at this point. Do you just farm bronze, grab the rewards that you want, level the alts you still need to, and call it a day? Or do you want to hop on the gear grind treadmill, get a super powerful character, clear through the raids on heroic and mythic, and then start working on collecting your rewards from the higher bronze earnings? That's going to be up to you. If you play a lot and enjoy the power fantasy that is offered by upgrading your gear, go for it. You can do some crazy stuff in WoW Remix. Farming that much bronze and upgrading your gear to get to that point does take a lot of time though, so bear that in mind. If all you want to do are grab the various rewards and mounts and transmogs, you can probably pick up most of that stuff without having to jump into heroic raids. There are a lot of options for bronze farming, and you can even farm huge chunks of bronze while leveling your alts, so I would take a step back and think about what you want from the event and see if upgrading your gear fits in. Now the reason why this is so important is because while the Cloak of Infinite Potential was supposed to be a huge portion of your player power in this event, is actually not providing as much of a crazy boost when compared to your actual gear and item level. As you get into the higher item levels of gear progression in WoW Remix, everything you do goes off the charts. Between the massive increases in stats, big boosts to your weapons, and your spell gems scaling with item level, your gear actually provides most of your power. That's why the frog farming was so potent so early. The threads were nice and all, having a souped up cloak is always going to provide you with some big DPS gains, but the sheer amount of bronze that frog farmers were able to accumulate was the real problem. This allowed them to fully upgrade their gear in some cases, which as we talked about is where the real power in this event currently comes from. Now, while frog farmers had their cloaks nerfed recently, they didn't receive any changes, rollbacks, or updates to their upgraded gear, so they actually didn't lose the vast majority of their power, which is why we still have some folks carrying entire raids to victory. So if you want to power up, you'll have to sacrifice some rewards to spend bronze on your gear instead, and if you were waiting to see if the dev team were going to reduce the crazy costs for upgrading your gear, well, now we have a solid answer at least, even if it wasn't the answer we were hoping for. Now, one of the weird changes that happened this week kind of revolves around item level as well, because very briefly the dev team made heroic raids more difficult for players with higher item levels. I guess gear was providing too much of a power boost, because if you have a high enough item level you can breeze through every type of content in the game, including heroic and mythic raids, which is supposed to be the last obstacle to overcome in MOP Remix. So the update made heroic raids harder for anyone with an item level over 406 to try and slow them down, but then they also made the heroic raids easier for anyone with lower than 371 item level to help create a smoother transition between normal and heroic raids. Then they also had a middle ground where things stayed the same. So this means that heroic raid bosses would have gotten harder as you gear up, which is another version of the item level scaling feature that we've seen adopted quite a lot through recent expansions, and most notably with WoW Remix as well. I don't really think it's a good feature in general. They really need need to figure out a better way to smooth player progression that doesn't make them feel weaker when they're supposed to be getting stronger. Now thankfully the dev team must have realised this was a bad idea, because the hotfix that increased the difficulty of raids was reverted quite quickly, but the one which made things easier for lower item level players is still in place. So arguably the heroic raids are now easier to get into when compared to before, which is a good thing if you're wanting to dip your toes into that kind of content, but of course this created yet another weird interaction and problem. Now folks are trying to reduce their item level to get below that 371 breakpoint to make the bosses as easy as they can to blast through the raid as quickly as possible. Reducing your item level might seem like a silly thing to try, but there's actually a very easy way to do it in Remix. Jewelry and trinket slots contribute quite a lot of item level to your overall character panel, but they don't offer a lot of actual power. Each one is just 3 prismatic gems, and the gear slots themselves cannot be upgraded. They also don't interact with your spell gems at all, so they are kind of dead weight when you get to the crazy high item levels that are being targeted for these changes. So folks have just been deleting their jewelry slots. They're literally not worth the item level they contribute to your character, so they have 95% of their power left, but thanks to those hotfixes, the bosses in heroic raids are actually much easier than they were before. And then to round out the list of WoW Remix changes, there have also been quite a few nerfs to some very popular gems and abilities. Ward of Salvation has finally been nerfed, its duration was reduced, only the caster's healing counts towards the increase, and now healing increases the absorb size and heals the target. It may still be bugged currently, but either way it seems like the ward strat will be a thing of the past. Funeral Pyre was changed to only reactivate after 3 seconds, probably to make sure you don't spam it too fast and immediately turn it off. Chi-Ji may actually be worth using now with a higher scaling coefficient, but it only lasts 20 seconds down from 30, and Soul Tether was buffed to ignore line of sight, and the range was increased to 100 yards. As for Tinker Gems, Righteous Frenzy will consume twice as much health, Searing Light was actually buffed, which is kinda hilarious what with the insane damage Holy Priests are doing with the Searing Light Tinker right now, but anyway, Fervor was buffed, Arcanist's Edge was buffed, and Slay can no longer crit or inherit damage modifiers, so Slay was nerfed quite badly as well. The two main targets of these changes seem to be Ward and Slay, which isn't too surprising considering how powerful they were and how often they were being used. The Ward cheese definitely carried a lot of folks through raids they maybe shouldn't have been able to clear, or at least clear as early, easily, and quickly. But if you're worried about not being able to quickly clear your raids after these nerfs, don't worry. The next cheese has already been found with Lifestorm and Searing Light. There will always be a cheese. The player base will always find the path of least resistance, and the way Mop Remix is set up, there's always going to be something that lets you kill stuff super quickly, so don't worry too much about it. Raids will still be super quick to clear through, even though Ward will be a thing of the past. Now moving on, we have quite a lot of new information about the War Within Alpha, starting with the fact that Alpha is basically over at this point. The War Within testing cycle will move onto its beta phase on June 5th, which is basically with the very next reset. This is very exciting news, and it means the testing platform is almost feature complete. Usually Alpha is used to specifically test individual parts of the expansion, and when most of it has been given some good one-on-one time, we move on to beta, where the expansion as a whole is then tested. So most features should be available for testing. We'll see how the entire leveling experience flows from zone to zone, and we'll start to see things like Mythic plus dungeon testing, raid testing, and some higher difficulties of delves as well. Alpha was all about making sure each puzzle piece works individually, and then beta is all about making sure the puzzle all fits together. I am very excited to see how things progress, and I am especially excited to see how delves are going to work at those higher difficulties and what the new raid has in store for us. Now remember that anyone who pre-purchased the Epic edition of the War Within should get instant access to the beta as part of their pre-order bonus package. So if you forked over quite a bit of dosh, you can check out the War Within expansion early and see how it's all shaping up while giving feedback on things you do and don't like, and get an idea of how everything is going to play. I'll be very interested to see how this changes the beta testing cycle. Usually there aren't that many folks testing early on in alpha or beta, so getting a lot more people in to do some good testing could make for a much more polished end product and expansion launch. That's my hope anyway. We haven't had such an open beta experience for a while now, and I think getting as many players in as possible is really what will lead to the best expansion release that we could hope for. It's not just news of us moving into beta next week, we also have a brand new alpha build to dig through as well. For starters, humans finally have a replacement for their diplomacy racial. If you weren't aware, humans will no longer receive bonus reputation gains in the War Within, instead they will get an extra charge on their Hearthstone and the cooldown will be reduced by 5 minutes. So you can Hearthstone more often, and you can hold up to 2 charges, just in case you want to Hearthstone twice in a row for some reason. Bear in mind, with this being alpha, the new racial could still change by the time the expansion goes live, especially if there's a lot of negative feedback from the community. I think having 2 Hearthstones could definitely be useful in some cases, so it definitely could be worse. We also have a sneak peek at our new Mythic Plus seasonal mount coming in the War Within. The Diamond Mech Suit looks quite similar to other mech suit mount styles we've seen before, but this time we're taking a leaf out of Magni's book and going with the full diamond look. If the dev team goes the same route as they did throughout Dragonflight, this could be the model that we'll see for every Mythic Plus seasonal achievement in the expansion, which isn't super ideal in my opinion. I think it'll always be better when we have some variety thrown in, but the prospect of recolors and reskins of this mount are way more exciting when compared to the Dragonflight Mythic Plus season mount in my opinion. I could get excited for some recolors of this mech suit for sure. They could do some really cool things with it, and with the earthen being so, well, earth and stone and rock focused, we could see some interesting takes on gemstones or minerals with the themes used for this mount. There's definitely potential here, so I'm excited to see what the War Within expansion has in store for us. We may also be getting some new affixes in the War Within. We have absolutely zero solid information on this right now, but Wowhead has data mined 4 placeholder affixes. They have no names or information about what they might do, but we are overdue some new and interesting affixes in the Mythic Plus system, I would say. So with the beta coming our way shortly, we should get some more info about Mythic Plus and how everything is changing as we head into a new expansion. And then last but not least for this week, we actually have some balance tuning changes coming for live servers. I know most folks are probably busy farming bronze or chilling waiting for the War Within to start ramping up, but Season 4 is still a thing just in case you forgot about it. So Preservation Evokers are going to kick things off with a quick 6% buff to all of their healing, Resto Druids coming swinging with a mana cost reduction on Moonfire, Survival Hunters will see 2 buffs to their Force Set bonus to increase the focus cost reduction and increase the damage of those effects, Holy Paladins will see a 15% boost to their Word of Glory healing and a 20% increase to Light of Dawn's healing. Shamans will see a buff to Brimming with Life, and enhancement has quite a few damage buffs. Chain Lightning, Flame Shock, Frost Shock, Fire Nova and Crash Lightning damage are all up by 10%, and then Primordial Waves of Lightning Bolts were buffed up to 175 bonus damage, up from 150. And then Warlocks will also see some mana cost reductions to Fear and Demonic Gateway, because I guess some folks were running out of mana and we just can't have that now, can we? Now I would expect class changes and balance tuning to be kinda slow on retail until at least the War Within pre-patch. Pretty much every new build on the alpha has had some major changes to classes and specs, including to the new hero talent system coming in the War Within, and I expect beta will be chock full of balance tuning as well, but most of that won't matter until it hits live servers as part of the pre-patch for the next expansion, so I wouldn't expect to see many big changes on live servers until that happens in a few months' time. But that's all the news and updates we have for this week, so that's it for this video. How do you feel about the bronze cost for upgrading gear remaining high for the foreseeable future? Does that make you more interested or less interested in upgrading gear in MoP Remix? And what are you most excited about to see from the War Within beta? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.